Hello everyone, I'm Maiden and welcome to this video. As you probably know already, we're going to be reading this Reddit post called "I grew up confined to one room and never received organized schooling. Ask me anything." The best part about this is I'm not using anyone else's content. This is my own post and these are all my answers, and this is something that happened to me. So even though these are my answers and I know all the answers, I'm still going to be reading off screen a bit because I think I worded everything well and I'm going to stick to that. Our top comment was a two-part question. So the first part of that question is, how did you not go insane just cooped up in there for so long, and how did it feel whenever you left the house? I will clarify that I went outside in the yard with my parents and sister more frequently than any public outings, so I don't think any neighbors found it odd as I wasn't technically hidden away for long periods of time. Every outing to other locations felt like a special occasion, as they were often weeks or months apart. I would always have my mother take photos of me doing mundane things, like going to the doctor's office, or I particularly remember some taken outside a new dentist when I was about 12 because I really liked their building exterior. I just found those pictures today, so I'm actually going to be putting them in the video here. Yeah, so you can see I made her take pictures of me washing the car, because going to the car wash was really exciting. Going to the doctor's office. One time we went to a museum and I was so excited about that. And you can see I always had the urge to capture memories and to pose. The next part of the question was, do you find it hard to converse or make friends? And I said, I definitely didn't have great social skills when I first started meeting people and making friends. My only real experience with others had been my grandparents and doctors, people I didn't have to make any effort to befriend. I'd like to think I've learned how to socialize decently well in my now decade of experience with it, but I still make social errors and misunderstandings, but I don't feel that I do it disproportionately to people with a normal upbringing. And lastly, do you struggle with anything that's common for the average person? I said, I don't feel I actively struggle with anything in my current lifestyle, but I'm very aware that I lack a lot of knowledge in some areas, ones that don't presently affect me, such as history and math. I'm proficient in English thanks to constantly reading and have received high grades on sample tests on that subject. I've worked as a proofreader correcting the work of college graduates, but still haven't done my taxes unassisted. Mind you, this was almost 2 years ago. I have done my own taxes the past 2 years and I've done fine. What did you do to entertain yourself while alone in the room to stay sane? So a similar question to the first, but I think I went more in depth on this one. Different things at different ages. My sister, who was also mostly confined to the same room and who would entertain me, taught me to read at 3, and I would then read anything available to me. Magazines, newspapers, eventually books when I had access, and then later I had a phone and a shared laptop. I drew a lot and would listen to the radio and make mixtapes or watch TV. As I wasn't allowed to leave, the main TV was also in my room, and that's where everyone ate as well. One big question, and probably one that multiple people asked, is why wouldn't they allow you in other areas of the house? Fantastic question. I don't know the exact reason, as it was never given, nor did I ask, but I think it was easier to keep me in there to stay out of trouble and not require much supervision other than my sister. As I got older, I think it just remained more convenient to keep me, or us, in there instead of adapting to what an older child should be permitted. When did you move out? How did that go? My mother and I moved out when I was 16, when she had grown frustrated enough with the hoarder element of living there. My father often said he wanted to move, but would never actually follow through after looking at other places, so when she found a nice house, she signed on it thinking he would get on board. Unsurprisingly to me, he never did, as that was never truly what he wanted. I'm glad she stuck with it and began moving our things out, though I wish she had been motivated by his mistreatment of myself and my sister more than wanting a nice living space. Despite the motives of it, I was just happy to be out. Thankfully, he was too lazy to try very hard to either get us back or to move in with us. The more time passed, the more she understood he shouldn't be anywhere near us. Next question, do you recognize this as child abuse? Did the authorities ever get involved? I did. I watched a lot of Law & Order SVU, and while it wasn't technically age-appropriate viewing for a child under 10, I'm grateful for the fact it helped me recognize abuse when I may have otherwise assumed things were okay. It ensured I didn't have to unlearn much. No legal action was ever taken. I don't know what could have been done once I no longer lived there. I had opportunities to ask for help while there. I had unsupervised internet access and could have reported it somehow. But I didn't want my mother to face consequences when I felt it wasn't her fault. I now understand she was still in a position to help and didn't. Our landlord called the police to the house once when he had to enter to fix something and saw the condition of it. I know police came and talked to my father outside, but never entered or asked to speak with me, and nothing else ever happened. I don't know if any report was ever filed. This commenter said, "Gosh, I have so many questions. How many people lived in the house? Who escorted you to the bathroom? How did your sister learn how to read? Did the fact that you never left the house come up at any of your doctor's appointments?" Fantastic questions. 4 people lived in the house. Myself, my parents, and my older sister. Only my mother and father escorted me to the bathroom, and sometimes my sister would be the one taking me outside to do yard work or kick a ball around. I don't think my doctors knew about it. I know they knew I was being medically neglected to some degree, and to this day, I don't know why they didn't do anything as mandatory reporters of any suspected abuse or neglect. They knew I was being given doses of my prescriptions in an improper manner, which had me in the ER multiple times. The follow-up question is also important. Any idea why your parents were dosing you improperly? My father was the only one not following medical recommendations, but due to my mother working full-time, he was the primary caregiver. His own mother had the same condition throughout his entire life, type 1 diabetes. I don't know why I was being so vague. And when he was young and watching her treat herself, it was handled differently. I think in his mind, the way he saw her treat her condition, which was correct for her at the time, was the only correct way regardless of advancements and new types of medication. I'm not sure why he never altered his methods despite seeing it send me to the ER multiple times, but that's something only he can answer. Best I can guess is he couldn't admit ever being wrong. Physically, are you doing okay? I imagine you must have vitamin D deficiency, and having so little space to move, do you have any ongoing effects from not developing your muscles, etc.? Sorry if that's too much to ask. I really appreciate this question as it's something not often considered. I am indeed deficient in vitamin D, iron, and others. I got whooping cough last year because I hadn't realized how many vaccinations I had missed out on. It took almost a month to get it diagnosed after multiple urgent care and ER visits because they didn't consider an adult getting it. I was malnourished and stopped growing when I was about 12. My feet never grew past size 2, and most women's shoes start at 5, so I wear kids' shoes or more expensive custom pairs. I think the biggest physical effect is I have low endurance for exertion, something I attribute to not being consistently active as a child. I can sprint fast, but jogging is hard on my joints, and I get muscle cramps very easily despite good hydration. I do some weight training and have upped my max lifting capacity from about 20 pounds at 18 to 50 now, but I still feel that's low for my age and size. I know people smaller than me who can pick me up and carry me. I want to be able to do that and continue working on it, but progress is slow and I have to be careful to not overextend myself. Did anyone ever notice this was happening and try to help you? When was the point you realized that this is not normal? Did you ever try to run away? I don't think anyone outside the house ever knew the full extent while I was there. My grandparents on both sides knew something was off, as they were never allowed into the house, but for some reason they never did much. I believe my doctor knew enough to report, but I don't think she ever did either. I don't remember any light bulb moment. I remember not wanting to be near my father from a very young age, and I was allowed to watch crime shows as early as 7 years old. Those, especially SVU, taught me what was and wasn't okay. That's an advantage I had that my sister didn't. We got TV and internet access at the same time, but at very different ages. She didn't know much of anything else until her early teens, and later had a lot more emotional conflict with the idea of leaving, whereas that was always my goal. I never tried to run as I had no idea where to go. I didn't feel safe going to neighbors as there was a risk they'd return me. I had unsupervised internet access at 14 and could have contacted authorities online or asked an online friend to. But I didn't want to risk any consequences to my mother, because at the time I didn't view her as a responsible party. Is your family very religious? Surprisingly, not very. Both parents were raised attending church. I believe my paternal grandparents were Methodist and my maternal grandmother was Baptist. My parents stopped attending church when they moved away, but remained Christian in their professed values and would typically have the radio on a religious station. I can't say I really know what they actually believed in, but I do think my mother was a quote-unquote true believer, as one reason she said she was complacent was that she was always taught in church that the father is the leader and knows what's right. It took her a long time to start questioning him. What was hoarded at the house you were kept at? Everything. The room I lived in had cliché stacks of newspapers and magazines on one side, boxes of wasted toiletries and clothes on another. I didn't investigate much. Most things were in cardboard boxes. I know my father went to thrift stores a lot with the rationalization you can't pass up a good deal, even on things he didn't need. Lots of clothes, knickknacks, if you can name it, he probably bought it at some point. All with my mother's money. That should be illegal? Did you know what you were missing out on? Wow. I said, it is. I had fairly unrestricted, unsupervised TV and internet access, so I was fairly aware and always wanted to leave as soon as I could. Have your parents faced any punishment? Did you ask why you weren't allowed out or try to leave? Sorry for the question, but I'm really fascinated. Glad you made it out. No need to apologize. That's why I shared here. They have not. I think once we moved out, it became harder to pursue any case as there was no longer proof that I lived in those conditions, and I was hesitant to do so anyway as I didn't want my mother to face charges. I understand now that she was at best complacent, but I saw her as the good parent and was just glad to be out. I didn't want to risk foster care at that point. I sort of answered this earlier, but I said I never really asked. I think it began as an easy way to not supervise me and keep me out of trouble as a young child and just remained convenient for him. I never tried to leave. I had no idea where to go or what to do and feared being returned as a runaway to then face punishment. This one is a long reply from someone who had a similar experience. Reading your replies, I'm deeply affected because I had similar experiences. It's hard to open up about it. I don't think I have the language to accurately communicate the visceral, heavy, all-consuming rot of my childhood home. The air was thick with defeat. I was exposed to / experienced absolute devastation. Long silences interrupted by violence. Hopelessness was wallpaper. As difficult as it's been to recover, or really to develop the many skills and abilities I missed out on obtaining as a kid, I can never take freedom for granted. Like, freedom of movement is such a privilege. My question to you is this. Do you ever find yourself relating to well-known cases of familial childhood torture and or neglect? Or drawn to the details to know other people have gone through it too? When the Turpin children were rescued, I just remember thinking, oh my God, this isn't okay. Everyone knows it isn't okay. What happened to me wasn't okay either. Why was this objectively horrifying reality completely ignored and enabled when it's so obviously evil? Like, the first time I related to any presentations of childhood was when I read Flowers in the Attic. Sometimes I feel like I'm picking a wound, telling myself the story over and over, trying to find where it all went wrong. Other times it feels like I'm desperately trying to trigger some sense of repulsion, some instinctual reflex that was never developed in me. I never learned to avoid suffering. I'm not naturally intolerant to misery. It feels like home, and that is so, so dangerous. Apologies for the long comment and oversharing, but like I said, I very, very rarely ever encounter other survivors of this kind of abuse, neglect, torture. I wrote a long reply too. All right. Thank you for sharing so deeply. Please feel free to reach out here or any of my social medias if you ever need support or want to discuss things privately. It is indeed rare to find others like us, and I value the opportunity. And that goes for anyone watching. If you have happened to go through anything similar to this, I would love to be here to talk to you about it if you'd like to. It is very rare. Back to the comment. It's a much different feeling speaking to someone who has been there compared to answering most of these questions from curious outsiders. I completely agree with your statement on freedom of movement, and I try to take every opportunity for new experiences because I missed so much. I'm still doing things for the first time that many think nothing of. A friend is taking me to meet Santa for the first time this December. That didn't end up happening, but that is completely fine. I don't really like Santa because I didn't grow up with a positive opinion of him. I travel a lot, but sometimes still have the thought of, oh, I can't do that when it comes to bigger trips. Like when the same friend invited me to LA for the first time. I live in New Jersey, and my instinct was that was just too big for me. But we worked it out and it went perfectly. I do tend to avoid similar stories, not because hearing similar experiences is triggering, but because it's frustrating and sometimes anger-inducing. I'm so glad that others are rescued and their stories are told, but it reminds me that I'm not one of those stories. The ones that are infamous because someone faced the consequences and it's public record. It drives me to share my story because no one else can. There are no true crime podcasts about me. The only way my story will be known is if I tell it myself. I've had thoughts of making my own video essay on it, or even writing a book. I have not read Flowers in the Attic for the above reason, but I'm aware enough of it to use it as a comparison when trying to summarize my experience to new listeners. How did you learn to read and write? Your posts and comments are very well articulated. For not having any schooling curriculum, you write well. Thank you. My sister taught me to read when I was 3. She had only recently taught herself to read 2 years prior at 11, and she didn't want me to have the same experience. From there, I just read anything I could get my hands on, which included a lot of newspapers, lifestyle magazines, Good Housekeeping, Reader's Digest, Car and Driver, and then eventually my mother got me a library card and I'd go wild with that, checking out 10 plus books at a time. I read a lot of Hank the Cowdog and progressed to YA horse girl novels, Black Beauty, The Snow Pony, and so on into adult mystery novels and fantasy books. I remember deciding to read The Hobbit when that movie came out because I wanted to read it before watching. I got really into forensics around age 8 due to watching a lot of CSI and similar shows and would get textbooks on the subject, for fun. Side note, if I had been able to go to school, I would have been bullied relentlessly, so silver lining there. I had mostly unsupervised internet access starting around age 14, and while I wish I'd used it to find proper educational videos, I just used it to read more about things that interested me and then write my own stories. I don't remember learning to write, but I assume either my sister also taught me or that I figured it out at some point. So this is 2 separate questions, but I'm just going to combine the question because they were very similar. Did your parents work and what did they do? Did you celebrate holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving? My mother was the only employed member of the house and she worked at a shipping warehouse. They rented and he treated her money as his, using it to fund his hoarding. I believe he did some landscape work around the property in exchange for lowered rent, something he also shirked in favor of making his malnourished children do it in the Florida heat. We had a fairly traditional holiday routine and would go to my grandparents' house for major holidays and birthdays. They would always give us great gifts, but once back home we didn't get to use them. This is a somewhat long exchange. I don't know what it entails or if I'm going to keep it in, but I'm just going to read it and maybe I'll cut it, maybe I won't. How did you come to meet your partner after all this, and did you have a hard time dealing with boys/men when you first started going out in the world? I don't think I mentioned any partner in my post or answers. I've had 1 long-term relationship since moving out and I'm currently single, but I don't think it's relevant to this story. I've always been more cautious around males even before having any logical reasons to be. The only men I encountered in most of my childhood were my grandfather and uncles, and I remember hiding from them when I was very young, as the only other man in my life, my father, was someone to be afraid of. Eventually, I realized they weren't like him and was fine around them, but always preferred female doctors when possible. I remember one incident when I had a panic attack after seeing a male chiropractor, but it was due to him saying something that had been said to me during a beating. He didn't actually do anything improper, but he and others saw me have the breakdown and should have questioned it. There were a lot of people just not questioning what was wrong with me. TLDR, surprisingly not really. I don't think I'm any more dubious of men than the average woman is. With your sheltered upbringing and mainly being close to mom and sister, I'd wondered if you felt unfamiliar with interacting with men your age and how it affected your view of them and the dating scene in general. Glad to know you're all right and can have a normal relationship. Besides your father, would you say some of your wariness to men stem from watching a lot of crime stories where violence and homicide cases to women might arise often? Sounds like your sister grew up to be more religious and conservative compared to you. Any idea why? I forgot to congratulate you on becoming an independent person, even with all the sour lemons you had to start with. You've done amazing getting into a stable career without formal education. I wrote this a couple years ago! I don't know that it stemmed from the media I watched specifically, but that led me to an interest in real cases where I soon found that men commit more crimes against women than the inverse. Most women learn to be cautious of men either by examples or experience. Many have experienced crimes perpetuated by men at some point. I don't think my perspective is much different. I don't intend to speak much on my sister's experience, but she was 9 years older than me and didn't learn to read until she was 11, so her only input for those formative years was listening to our parents and the local Baptist and conservative talk radio stations. She knew absolutely no other perspectives and didn't talk to other people. In comparison, I had a lot more exposure to the world. The things I read, listened to, or watched weren't as limited, so I felt much more open to and comfortable with ideas other than those I was raised to believe. Would you say not being in formal education gave you an advantage in any way to those formally schooled? I think the only advantage a lack of formal education gave me is the fact I never experienced bullying or social stress before I was old enough to understand and handle stress like that. No one, other than my father, who I already didn't like and placed little importance on, teased me about my appearance or body, things I'm positive would have happened in school. I don't think others should be kept from socializing with other children to protect them from that reality, but I'm content with how my life went. For a while, the only other house I ever saw was my grandparents' house, but from that and watching TV or seeing photos in magazines, I knew that my situation wasn't normal. We thankfully visited them enough that it helped me learn how to function in a typical space. How did you come to be in that situation to begin with? Me was born this way. I was born into it. I believe it began as an easy way to not supervise me and just remained convenient. Do you think your life would have been different if you were allowed to go to school or just go out and socialize? If so, how? Honestly, I don't think you missed out on anything. The world is a big mental asylum whether people want to admit it or not. I know it would be different, but it's impossible to accurately theorize how. Just guessing based on how quickly I learned to read and how easily I still learn new things, I think I would have done well in school, and that would have likely led me into different social circles and fields of work. I'm sorry your own experiences have left you feeling that way. How do you feel about stuff, physical objects, now? Do cluttered spaces make you feel anxietal or give you a sense of security? Were you ever angry at your parents? Have you been able to forgive them? I don't remember my answer to this. Let's read it together. I definitely prefer having my space tidy, but I don't get too stressed about clutter if I'm unable to clean up for a bit because I know it'll never get as bad as what I grew up with. I'm very aware and intolerant of gross types of uncleanliness as opposed to not immediately putting away my clean laundry or having craft supplies strewn on my floor. I didn't even answer the second half. I guess forgive in the sense that I don't think about it constantly and I don't dwell on it, and I think I've definitely forgiven my mother for it. This post was written a couple years ago, but she passed between the time I made this post and now. And so I've kind of had no option but to forgive her in my mind because there's nothing else to do. And I know a lot more about her now, and I feel a lot of sympathy for her. I don't know that I've forgiven my father in the sense that I don't want good for him. And I think forgiveness means wanting the person who harmed you to prosper and be okay even if they're not in your life. The saying of, I want you to eat but not at my table, is something that I feel about people who have wronged me in my adult life. And so I would say I've forgiven those people because I want them to be well out of my life. I don't want him to be well. I want him to face consequences and to feel bad for what he did. So I don't think I've forgiven him fully. One of my responses cracked me up. Do you think you would have learned more if you went to school? Yes. How did you catch up with schooling? Or rather, what did you do for education once you left the house at 16? Also, did you know what you were missing? How did you feel about being in that room? Did you ever sneak out? For better or worse, I was not placed in any formal education even after my mother and I moved out. I can't know her exact reasons, but it was likely a mix of not having time, she worked full-time, not wanting to explain our situation, and feeling I was already smart enough by then as I had been reading textbooks for fun and, at least to her, was tech savvy. Perhaps she felt I wouldn't benefit more than the risk of her involvement, complacency, being exposed. I never snuck out, even into the other rooms. I was reasonably afraid of physical consequences if I was discovered doing so, to an extent I wouldn't even leave to use the bathroom if I was home alone and needed to. Since I had fairly unrestricted TV access, I knew it was not only abnormal, but wrong. I just knew I had to get through it and intended to leave as soon as I was 18. Elaborating on that answer a bit, I remember as far back as 14 counting down the years. So I turned 14, and from there I would say less than 4 years, and then less than 3 years. And thankfully I only got to less than 2 years, and then we left. The last question for this video, have you gone to therapy at all to process the neglect, and do you still have a relationship with your parents? I should have started therapy as soon as we moved out, but didn't, possibly due to expenses or my mother not wanting our situation known. I then moved across the country when I was 18 and didn't prioritize it until recently when other issues became overwhelming. I highly recommend it to anyone. And I don't. I cut all contact with my father when I was 17, and my mother supported this choice. For a while after that, we had a fairly normal relationship until about a year ago, at the time of making this post. And our last interaction was me sending a thank you for a birthday gift which she never replied to. I would respond if she reached out, but I don't feel compelled to pursue a relationship with her. And then she died. So, I don't know. I don't know that she would have responded. If I did, I've since learned that she wasn't doing well mentally for the last year, so it wasn't anything against me that she wasn't reaching out. She just was not able to. And as I said before, I've learned more about her, and I've forgiven her, and it sucks that I can't tell her that. So that is pretty much all of the questions on that post. If you would like to read it more in depth, it is linked in the description. Some of the questions got into conversations that might be interesting, and the post itself is archived, but if you have any questions that I haven't answered, if you're curious about this, please feel free to comment below, and I will either reply directly or discuss it in another video. I would like to, as I said in one of those comments, do a video essay on this subject and write a book on it, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to tell the story because it is still just very disorganized in my mind. Like, I can answer specific questions about it, but trying to tell it linearly is a challenge. If you've experienced anything similar or just anything that, you know, you don't talk about, the reason I talk about this so much and why I want to continue talking about it and sharing the details of it is because I think a lot more people have issues that are huge that they don't talk about, and outwardly life can look good. I've had people tell me that, like, they think I have like a perfect life just because I'm always traveling, I'm going to concerts, I'm having fun, and that's just because I mostly only post when I'm doing something fun or in a good mood. I don't like posting depressing things, and when I'm sad, I just don't feel really like posting, but I do think it's important to share that things aren't always great. I hope this was insightful and possibly entertaining, because I recognize that it's interesting. It's a unique experience, and I don't mind that people seem fascinated by it when I talk about it. If you want to watch other things that I've done, everything else on this channel is a lot more lighthearted, so check out some other videos. I have a podcast, I have an ASMR channel where I do relaxing stuff and not this. If you've watched this entire video, thank you for sticking around and getting to know me a little better, and I hope I see you on a more fun video. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!